Let me get some calls here. Rob, Philadelphia, you're on the Wilkow Majority. Hello.
Hey, Andrew, how are you? I just wanted to say that what's most frustrating to someone like myself, who, I mean, my wife and I make a decent living. We make six figures now, but I live in a pretty wealthy area, so we're basically not doing that great. I mean, we make enough to pay our bills and so on and so forth. So, but I'm comfortable. We're doing fine. I should be happy. But what frustrates me the most about all of this is, no matter which side of the aisle you're hearing from or what have you, is I'm not hearing any solutions to what I consider to be the real problems. I'm not hearing how jobs are going to get created. I'm not hearing. I look at companies and I see the problem. To me, I see the problem is you got a CEO making $20 million. The company's profiting $15 billion in a single year, but the average worker is only making maybe $35,000 a year.
Well, maybe that's all his labor is worth.
What's that? I'm sorry.
Maybe that's all his labor is worth.
The average.
You're demanding that a company overpay for something to make you feel good about it.
No, I'm not. First, I'm not demanding it. What I'm saying is, and obviously you're right. Not everyone's worth $100,000 a year. But I guess what I'm saying to you is, it seems to me that the wealth is certainly concentrated at the upper portion of our society. I don't think anyone can really deny that. I don't know how to force it. Unions, to me, when I look at our government, and I'm sure you would agree with this, one of the great things about our government, the way it's structured, or the way it's supposed to work anyway, is the checks and balances. You know, the three different bodies of government all check each other as far as their power goes, and that's how it's supposed to work. And when I look at the marketplace, I don't see any check against corporate greed. There used to be.
Well, stop using that phrase, corporate greed. You mean the profit motive. Now, It's funny in our society that we will anger ourselves at the wealth gap in a corporation. We'll say, well, the CEO is making this amount of money and a guy driving a forklift is making this amount of money. But we don't think about this when we go off to see our favorite sports team play, that the guy who's the quarterback's making this amount of money and the guy selling the hot dogs and peanuts is making this amount of money. When we go to a movie, we don't think, hey, the celebrity in the movie's making this amount of money, but the guy selling me the ticket's making this amount of money. Or when we go to a rock concert, that the band on stage or the singer on stage is making this amount of money, but the people that set up the chairs and the lights and all this, they're making this amount of money. So what industry do you think could be made more fair, and how would you make it more fair?
That's a really good point. You're exactly right. And I don't claim to have the solutions. I'm only claiming to be able to look and see this is clearly what the problem is. There's just too big of a gap, so that, there's just too big of a gap between what people are making. And the middle class, it's just not making it enough money anymore. I mean, there's a handful of people who are making it all. I don't know what the solution is, Andrew. I don't. But I know. Well,
here's something I want to help you understand. So you don't think I'm such a bad guy in this. Economically speaking, when you look at the cost of government and the imposition of government, there are two types of industries: the industries that can defer their costs to the final consumer, and the industries that can't. Okay, there are some industries that can't. If you were to go out if the city of New York said we're going to slap a $6 per pretzel tax on the pretzel carts here in New York City, you'd have no pretzel carts. Nobody's going to pay $8 for a pretzel. Okay, I mean, somebody might, but you would lose a lot of pretzel carts. You might be left with a handful of pretzel carts that make really good pretzels, but for the most part, the pretzel cart guys wouldn't be able to defer that cost. And they wouldn't be able to push that cost back on the cost of ingredients or the building of the carts or the umbrellas that they use. In other words, if government takes money away from a company producing a product, there has to be a pushback in cost deferment.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And for the record,
now, no. Hold on. I'm trying to lay this out. When you look at the entertainment industry, it's magic that no matter how bad the economy supposedly is, Hollywood is still turning out blockbusters. A-list actors are still making millions of dollars. The summer concerts are still going on. I mean, there's an NFL lockout, but the problem there isn't the fans unwilling to buy the tickets. In other words, no matter how bad things get, the industries that produce the things that we need less seem to be the least regulated and the most profitable. The industries that produce the things we need most seem to be the most taxed and the most regulated and, for the sake of politics, most demonized.
Sure.
So hold on. The fact that wages might not be going up is is something that people could put their fingers on, but if wages were stagnant, but costs were coming down or costs weren't rising, government is one of the drivers of cost increases. If a company is out there charging too much for its product, but the economic environment is also almost impossible for people to compete with that company. In other words, if some guy started charging $8 for a pretzel on the street, and people are like, I'm not going to pay $8, somebody else is going to say, I'll charge $3. Then somebody else will say, I'll charge $2. And in the competition, everybody will find their pretzel. But the fact of the matter is that we have this animosity towards the companies that produce the things that we need because we think that the things that we need should be produced out of just some sort of social benefit, and we want to have all this extra money so we can go to restaurants and rock concerts and vacations, and yet we're never as a society driven to look at opportunity cost, what is needed versus what is wanted. We're a wants equals need society. Magically, in all this economic downturn, the iPad is still selling. Well, who's buying it? Where are they getting the money? Where's the money coming from for Forbes magazine to report that Lady Gaga is going to make $100 million? How is that possible? Apple has more money on hand than the government.
Absolutely. And if I can just say one last thing, I agree with everything that you're saying for the most part, and I am, even though I would be labeled a liberal, I'm not big on tax cuts because obviously I agree the corporations will just pass that on to the consumers. I'm also not a big fan of wealth distribution in that manner. And I'm also in total agreement with you on regulations. A lot of liberals on my side don't have any idea how regulations kill jobs, kill industries, squash competition. They don't understand that part of it, and I get into these conversations with them. But if I can just say, that's why it seems to me like if you're not looking for a government solution, I know unions are a bad word, but I feel like without a labor force, without a unionized labor force to have some sort of counter to the profit motive so that they can get their fair share, I feel like without that...
Yeah, but when you raise the cost of labor, you raise the cost of the product.
Well, that's not always true. If you look at the company XYZ I just gave you, that profited $15 billion, and they've got 15,000 employees who are averaging $30,000 a year. Well, that company could have profited $10 billion and doubled the salary of every one of those employees.
So then run a business and do that.
No, of course they won't. Because
well, I'm saying you should go run a business and do that. Go out there with a great idea. You invest in your labor movement and take from your research and development or your physical plant or whatever it is. You go out and run a business that way.
Sure. Well, there are some companies out there that do obviously do that, and hopefully that'll catch on.
They only do it. Look, here's something, Rob. They do it for two reasons: because they can afford to and pretend that they're doing it because they're just great sweethearts, or they're investing in a good PR campaign. Why do you think companies, if you're an industrialist and you're running a company, you're going to hire somebody to make you look really good in the media and society? So if Yoplait announces they're going to donate 20 cents of every pink top thing of yogurt to breast cancer research, they're not donating anything. You paid for that.
Hey, I'll let you go, Andrew. I know you've given me a lot of time. If I can just say, I'm what you would call a liberal. I do agree with a lot of the things that you do say. I wish you would try to, like some of the things I've said today.
Well, here, Rob, wrap your head around this. If liberals have this animosity towards wealth, they shouldn't chase it. Thank you very much for the call.